Before she was the queen of talk, she was just a little girl, born straight into chaos. Rural Mississippi, 1954. A world that didn't have much mercy for a poor black girl. Dirt roads, wooden shacks, and the smell of sweat and survival hanging in the air. That's where Oprah Winfrey took her first breath. Her mama, Vernita Lee, was just a teenager, scared, broke, and trying to figure out life herself. Her father, Vernon Winfrey, was away up in Tennessee, barely part of the picture. So, from day one, Oprah's life started on what most people would call hard mode. Her first home was in some cozy nursery. It was her grandmother's tiny wooden house on a farm in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. The kind of place where you didn't have running water, where Sundays meant church, and where hard work was just life, not an option. Her grandma, Hattie Mae, raised her with that old-school discipline and love that came wrapped in faith. If Oprah got out of line, that switch came out quick. But if she did good, Hattie Mae let her know she had a gift, and that gift, her voice. See, while other kids played outside, Oprah was memorizing Bible verses. By the time she was just 3 years old, she could stand in front of a full church, lift her little chin, and deliver scripture like she was born on that pulpit. The congregation called her the preacher. Folks would whisper, "That child's going to be something someday." But make no mistake that something wasn't obvious then. They were poor, like real poor. Oprah didn't have store-bought clothes. Her grandmother sewed dresses out of potato sacks. She used to get teased by other kids. They called her Sack Girl. But even then, she'd tell people, "Someday, you'll remember me." See? That's the thing about Oprah from the jump. She had that fire. Even when the world gave her scraps, she found a way to make a meal out of it. Life on that Mississippi farm was tough, but it was also where she learned the rhythm of storytelling. Every Sunday in that little church, she'd listen to the preacher, the choir, the way people's voices rose and fell like music. She learned that words could move people, could make them laugh, cry, believe. And right there, that seed of purpose was planted. Her voice was her superpower. Her grandma didn't have much to give. No fancy toys, no money, no education. But what she did give was faith. Every morning, she'd tell Oprah, "Speak the word. You've got a voice, child. Don't ever let nobody take it." But, let's be real. Faith alone doesn't fill a hungry stomach. Oprah grew up knowing what it meant to struggle. They lived off the land, feeding chickens, picking vegetables, washing clothes in a pot over a fire. Some nights, the only light came from kerosene lamps. And yet, she'd sit by that dim light, reading whatever she could get her hands on. The Bible, newspapers, old magazines. She didn't know it yet, but she was training her mind for the spotlight. She wasn't reading to pass time. She was reading to escape. Because when you grow up in poverty like that, imagination becomes your best friend. You dream yourself into a different world just to stay sane in the one you're in. And that imagination, that hunger, became her armor. But here's the thing nobody talks about enough. That early childhood wasn't just about survival. It was the foundation of everything she'd one day become. When you've had to work for every bite of food, every ounce of dignity, it builds a kind of toughness you can't buy. Oprah learned early that the world wasn't fair, but she also learned how to fight back, not with fists, but with words. There's a story she used to tell about sitting under a big oak tree near her grandma's house, pretending she was talking to a crowd. She'd make up stories, perform imaginary interviews, and talk about dreams bigger than the fields around her. Nobody was watching, but she believed somebody would, someday. That's what's wild about her story. Even as a kid, she saw something beyond her circumstances. Most people born into that kind of poverty stay trapped by it. Oprah, she was already planning her escape route, and that escape was her voice. But let's not romanticize it too much. Life had a way of reminding her she was still just a poor little black girl in the Jim Crow South. The same people who clapped for her in church sometimes looked down on her outside it. Racism was real. Segregation was everywhere. Opportunity. That was something you had to fight tooth and nail for. Still, through all that, Hattie Mae kept drilling one truth into Oprah's head. You are somebody. And maybe that was the most powerful thing of all. Because when a child grows up hearing that, even once, it can change everything. So when people ask, how did Oprah become Oprah? The answer doesn't start in Chicago, or on TV, or in some big studio. It starts right there, barefoot on that Mississippi dirt. Wearing a potato sack dress, quoting Bible verses like she owned the room. That little girl didn't know it yet, but those verses were more than words. They were preparation. She was learning how to hold attention, how to feel emotion, how to connect with people's souls. The same way she'd one day connect with millions through a screen. And yet, even with that spark, the universe had more tests lined up. Because if there's one thing life does to the ones destined for greatness, it breaks them first. So while Oprah's grandma gave her strength and faith, the world outside that farmhouse had a storm waiting. One that would shake her to the core. Because the little girl who could light up a church with her voice was about to face a darkness that would nearly silence her forever. You know how people say, tough times make tough people. Well, for Oprah, tough doesn't even begin to cover it. After those early years in Mississippi, life took a sharp turn. When she was 6, Oprah left the quiet rhythm of farm life and was sent north to live with her mother, Vernita Lee, in Milwaukee. But instead of comfort, what she found was chaos. Imagine this. A little girl clutching a small suitcase, stepping off a bus into a crowded, noisy city she didn't know. The neighborhood wasn't safe. The house wasn't calm. And her mother, working long hours as a maid, was barely around. There wasn't much food, no one to tuck her in, no one asking about her day. Just noise, confusion, and neglect. Milwaukee was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it became a storm she barely survived. See, when a child's left alone too long, the world finds ways to hurt them. Between the ages of 9 and 14, Oprah faced horrors no kid should ever face. She was sexually abused, not by strangers, but by people who should have protected her. Family members, her mom's friends, people she trusted. She tried to speak up once, but no one believed her. Imagine being just a child, carrying that weight, walking through life smiling on the outside while dying on the inside. She said years later that she felt invisible, like her pain didn't matter. And when nobody listens, you start to think, maybe they're right, maybe you don't matter. The trauma cut deep. It changed her. The same little girl who used to light up a church now started to dim. She stopped believing in herself. She started rebelling, skipping school, running away from home, searching for love anywhere she could find it. But the world's judgment, oh, it came fast. Teachers called her troubled. The system labeled her delinquent. No one stopped to ask why she was hurting. They just saw a girl out of control. At 14, life hit her with another heartbreak. She got pregnant, scared, alone, still just a child herself. When she gave birth, her baby boy died shortly after. For a while, Oprah didn't speak about it. How could she? The shame, the grief, the weight of it all. It nearly crushed her. She once said that at that point, she felt like her life was already over, like she was damaged beyond repair. But here's the twist. That pain, that unbearable, unfair pain, didn't destroy her. It built her fire. See, some people break under trauma. Others turn it into fuel. And Oprah, she chose fire. The world had already told her no 1,000 times. No safety, no love, no chance. But something inside her whispered, not yet. That whisper turned into a voice. And that voice would one day move mountains. The turning point came when she was sent to live with her father, Vernon Winfrey, in Nashville. Vernon was a strict man, old school, disciplined, the kind of guy who believed that structure saves lives. And in Oprah's case, he was right. When she moved in, he laid down the law. You live in my house. You read a book every day. He didn't care if it was the Bible, a newspaper, or Shakespeare. She had to read it, write a report, and talk about what she learned. He made her think. He made her focus. He made her believe again. And for the first time in her life, someone didn't just discipline her. He invested in her. Her father gave her what no one else had given before: boundaries and belief. He saw potential where others saw trouble. That structured those daily lessons, those pages she turned night after night. They became her escape route out of pain. Books became her therapy. Words became her armor. And that voice, the one that had been silenced by years of abuse, started to rise again. Oprah found refuge in education. At school, she began to shine. Her grades went up, her confidence returned, and that spark, the same one her grandma once saw, came back stronger. She started winning speech contests, excelling in debate, standing in front of classrooms, speaking with a power that stunned everyone who heard her. Teachers who once overlooked her began to notice. She had presence, she had passion. And for the first time, she saw a way out, not through luck, not through pity, but through her own damn will. Still, let's not sugarcoat it. Healing didn't happen overnight. The pain was still there. That kind of trauma doesn't just disappear. But every time she opened a book, every time she stood up to speak, she was taking back a piece of herself. Piece by piece, word by word, she rebuilt what life tried to break. By the time she hit her late teens, Oprah wasn't just surviving anymore. She was starting to thrive. The girl who once ran away from home now had ambition. She wanted more than survival. She wanted to make noise. It's wild to think about, right? The same kid everyone gave up on, the problem child, was slowly transforming into someone unstoppable. She later said that her father's tough love saved her life. And not in a cliché way, literally. Without that structure, she might have stayed lost, trapped in that pain, forever defined by what others did to her. But Vernon gave her something no one else did: the belief that she still had a future. And that's where the magic began. Because when you combine pain with purpose, you get power. That says what Oprah carried into the next chapter of her life, a mix of scars and fire. And that fire, it was about to find its first microphone. She had faced the worst the world could throw at her. But what she did next would change everything. Picture this: a teenage girl who's been through hell and back, standing in front of her high school class with a note card trembling in her hands. The room's loud, full of kids who don't exactly take speech competitions seriously. But the second she opens her mouth, silence. Every word she speaks hits different. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. That girl, Oprah Winfrey. And that moment, the first time she realized her voice could move people. After everything she'd been through, the chaos, the pain, the loss, that voice became her anchor. It wasn't just talent, it was survival. She joined her high school speech and debate team, and it didn't take long for everyone to see. She wasn't just good, she was a natural-born communicator. Every contest she entered, she lit it up. Her speeches weren't robotic or rehearsed. They were honest, raw, and full of heart. Soon enough, that talent earned her something she never dreamed she'd have: a scholarship to Tennessee State University. A full ride. For a girl who once wore dresses made from potato sacks, that was huge. She majored in speech and performing arts, soaking up everything about communication, theater, and presence. But here's where it gets wild. While she was still in college, a local radio station took notice of that warm, confident voice. They offered her a job reading news part-time. She didn't hesitate. She said yes, even though she had zero professional experience. And just like that, the girl who used to read Bible verses in church was now reading news to the city of Nashville. And she crushed it. She wasn't polished. She didn't sound like the others with their perfect broadcast voices. But that's exactly what made her stand out. Her delivery felt human, like she was talking to you, not at you. It wasn't long before television came calling. At just 19, Oprah became the youngest person and the first black woman to ever anchor the evening news at WLAC-TV in Nashville. Think about that. 19 years old. Most people her age were just figuring out life. Oprah was sitting behind a news desk, breaking barriers every single night. But let us be real, breaking barriers in the 1970s South wasn't a smooth ride. The newsroom wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for her. She faced racism, sexism, and backhanded advice that was more insult than guidance. Producers told her she was too emotional, too raw, too different. What they really meant was she didn't fit their mold. She wasn't the stoic, cold anchor they were used to. She showed feeling. When she read tragic stories, her voice cracked. When she interviewed people in pain, she teared up. And to them, that wasn't professional. But to Oprah, it was human. So instead of trying to become who they wanted, she doubled down on who she already was. She leaned into her authenticity. If being emotional was a flaw, she'd turn it into her trademark. And that's exactly what she did. Still, her early TV career wasn't all smooth sailing. After a while, the pressure and politics of hard news started wearing her down. She didn't want to just report the news. She wanted to connect with people, to talk about real life, real emotions, real struggles. She wanted conversations, not headlines. So when a Baltimore station called, offering her a co-hosting job on a local talk show called People Are Talking, she took a leap of faith and moved. She didn't know it then, but that move would change everything. Now, let me paint you a picture of that first show. It's 1978. The studio lights are hot. Oprah's sitting across from her co-host, still a little nervous, still figuring out the rhythm. The topic: everyday people with extraordinary stories. And the second she starts engaging, leaning forward, laughing, listening, the room changes. The audience feels her. They don't see a host. They see someone real, someone who actually cares. That day, something clicked. Oprah realized she wasn't meant to be just a news anchor or a reporter. She was meant to connect hearts. Her empathy, the same thing that once got her criticized, became her superpower. She turned conversation into connection. In just a few months, People Are Talking went from a small local show to one of Baltimore's top daytime hits. Viewers weren't just watching, they were feeling, and they couldn't get enough of her. That's when Oprah started to believe, maybe this is it. Maybe this is what all that pain was for. Because think about it. The girl who once had no voice was now giving others a platform to share theirs. She wasn't reading scripts anymore. She was writing her own story in real time. Every interview, every laugh, every tear on that show taught her something new about connection, empathy, and storytelling. But success didn't erase the fear. Deep down, she still wondered if she belonged in this world of TV, a world still dominated by white, polished hosts who didn't look or sound like her. But then she'd walk out to the audience and people would smile, nod, cry. They'd hug her after the show, thanking her for saying what they couldn't. And that's when she knew. She didn't have to fit in, she just had to keep showing up as herself. Oprah's rise in Baltimore was proof that authenticity beats perfection every single time. Still, she had no idea the ride was just beginning. Because while she was lighting up local TV, fate was already preparing her next big stage, one that would make her a household name across America. Her voice had carried her from the cotton fields of Mississippi to the bright lights of television. But now, that voice was about to echo across the nation. And what came next would turn a local talk show host into one of the most powerful women in history. Sometimes, life drops one of those calls that doesn't sound like opportunity, it sounds like trouble. And that's exactly what happened to Oprah in 1984. She was doing great in Baltimore, co-hosting People Are Talking, building a name, finally feeling like she belonged. But then the phone rang. It was a producer from Chicago. They wanted her to come host a morning talk show called AM Chicago. Now, on paper, That sounded exciting. Chicago was a bigger market, more viewers, more visibility. But there was a catch. The show was tanking. Ratings were trash. It was dead last. Everyone in TV said taking that gig was career suicide. "Girl, you go there, and you're done," they told her. But see, Oprah never played it safe. She said yes. Not because it made sense, but because it felt right. She packed her bags, left everything familiar, and headed to the Windy City, a move that would rewrite television history. When she got to Chicago, the studio wasn't glamorous. The energy, dead. The team, skeptical. They'd seen hosts come and go. Nobody believed some young black woman from Tennessee was going to turn things around. But Oprah didn't show up trying to fix the show. She just showed up as herself. The first time those studio lights hit her, it was like she had been training her whole life for that moment. She didn't read off the teleprompter like everyone else. She looked people dead in the eye and talked to them. She laughed with guests, hugged strangers, and cried when stories hit home. And that changed everything. In just a few months, AM Chicago went from the bottom of the ratings to the #1 talk show in town. Nobody could believe it. The same producers who doubted her were now scrambling to figure out how she'd done it. But the truth was simple. Oprah made TV feel real. Daytime television at that time was all glitz, perfect hair, fake smiles, over-rehearsed conversations. Oprah walked in and tore down that wall. She brought real emotions, real people, real stories. She wasn't afraid to cry, to ask the hard questions, or to say, "I know exactly how you feel." Audiences didn't just watch her, they trusted her. One Chicago viewer wrote in saying, "It's like she's talking to me." That was her magic. Oprah didn't perform for people, she connected with them. Within a year, the show's success was undeniable. Advertisers lined up, ratings soared. And suddenly, Oprah Winfrey, the girl who once struggled to survive, was dominating Chicago TV. But she wasn't just climbing, she was transforming the entire talk show game. See, before Oprah, talk shows were mostly gossip, shock value, and celebrity fluff. She flipped the script. She made it about the human experience, about healing, empathy, and truth. She talked about relationships, self-worth, forgiveness, stuff nobody else on TV wanted to touch. And she did it with such warmth, people couldn't look away. By 1986, the show's popularity exploded. It was syndicated nationwide. Millions of viewers across America started tuning in daily to watch The Oprah Winfrey Show. That's right, AM. Chicago got renamed to match its star. The network didn't just have a hit. They had a revolution. Let's pause for a second and take that in. In just 2 years, Oprah went from hosting a failing local show to leading the most-watched talk show in America. That's not luck. That's purpose meeting preparation. And when that iconic The Oprah Winfrey Show title flashed across screens for the first time, it wasn't just another TV premiere. It was the beginning of a cultural shift. Audiences didn't tune in because of celebrity guests. They tuned in because they saw themselves. A single mom from Detroit, a student from Texas, a grandmother in Georgia, all of them could look at Oprah and say, "She gets it." She gave people permission to be vulnerable. To talk about pain, dreams, trauma, and healing. To cry in daylight and not feel ashamed. Every episode felt like therapy wrapped in television. And that's why The Oprah Winfrey Show didn't just pull in ratings, it pulled in hearts. The suits in Hollywood didn't know what to make of her. She didn't fit the mold. She wasn't trying to be the next anybody. She was too busy being the first Oprah. And behind that success, she worked like a machine. Her days started before sunrise and ended long after midnight. She read every audience letter, reviewed every show note, obsessed over every detail. But more than anything, she protected her authenticity like gold. When networks pushed for more tabloid-style drama, she said no. She knew her audience wasn't there for trash TV. They were there for truth. And that truth turned into power. By the late 80s, the Oprah Winfrey Show wasn't just dominating the charts. It was defining American culture. People didn't just quote her. They lived by her. Her name was synonymous with empathy, with hope, with possibility. Chicago had become her kingdom, and the world was watching. But here's the thing about success. The higher you climb, the thinner the air gets. Fame brings pressure. Power brings expectation. And while Oprah was changing lives on screen, behind the scenes, she was wrestling with something deeper, something personal. Because the spotlight that made her a star also forced her to confront the parts of herself she still hadn't healed. She had conquered the TV world. But her next battle wouldn't be for ratings, it would be for her soul. Let's be real. Fame looks shiny from the outside. The lights, the money, the headlines, all of it screams, "You made it." But nobody talks about what happens when the applause fades and the noise inside your head gets louder. That's where Oprah found herself. By the late 80s and early 90s, she wasn't just famous, she was everywhere. The Oprah Winfrey Show had become a household name. Viewers tuned in by the millions. She was on magazine covers, late-night shows, award stages, you name it. People loved her warmth, her realness, her energy. But the higher she climbed, the heavier the crown got. See, the world has a weird way of building people up just to tear them down. And the tabloids? Oh, they had a field day with her. Every move she made, every friendship, every relationship, every pound she gained or lost became national gossip. You couldn't walk into a grocery store without seeing her face on some magazine, splashed with headlines like Oprah's secret struggles or the real story behind her weight. It wasn't fair. She was out there trying to change television, but people were more interested in the number on her scale. Annette got to her. She started battling something she'd struggled with since she was a teenager. Emotional eating, food became comfort. It was like a bandage for pain she didn't know how to name. When the cameras turned off and the studio went dark, she'd sit alone, staring at her success and feel empty. Imagine that. You've got fame, power, money, but something's missing. The world says, you've made it, but your heart whispers, this isn't it. For Oprah, that whisper became impossible to ignore. She started asking herself the hard questions, why do I feel unfulfilled when I have everything I thought I wanted? Why do I still feel like I'm not enough? So she did something rare for someone in her position. She stopped running from herself. She turned inward. Instead of chasing the next headline, she started chasing truth. Therapy became her safe space. Journaling became her mirror. She filled notebooks with questions, pain, and realizations. Books like The Seat of the Soul and A Course in Miracles opened her up to something deeper, something spiritual. She started to realize that maybe her purpose wasn't to entertain, it was to enlighten. And that's when the real transformation began. It wasn't loud. It didn't happen overnight. But slowly, the woman America thought they knew began to evolve. She started talking about healing, forgiveness, and inner peace on her show topics nobody else in daytime TV dared to touch. Instead of just interviewing guests about scandals and drama, she asked questions that made people think, who are you when the cameras are off? What's your purpose? What's stopping you from being happy? The show shifted from just talk to teaching. At first, some people thought she'd lost it. Nobody wants therapy on TV, they said. But Oprah wasn't chasing ratings anymore. She was chasing meaning. She wanted people to wake up, to feel something real. To start believing that they were more than their pain, their weight, their trauma, their paycheck, and the wild thing. The more authentic she became, the more people connected. Letters started flooding in from viewers across the country, folks saying, Oprah, your words changed how I see myself, or you helped me leave an abusive relationship, or I finally believe I'm enough. That's when she knew this was bigger than TV. This was purpose. But let's not sugarcoat it. Purpose doesn't erase pain. It just gives it direction. Behind the scenes, Oprah was still fighting old wounds. She still had days where she'd doubt herself, where the weight of expectation felt suffocating. But she also knew she wasn't that little girl from Mississippi anymore. She had power now, not the kind that comes from fame, but the kind that comes from clarity. And that clarity changed everything. She started setting boundaries, saying no to toxic people, taking her mental and spiritual health seriously. Instead of chasing ratings, she chased authenticity. And in doing that, the Oprah Winfrey Show evolved right along with her. You could feel it in every episode. The tone was different. She wasn't just asking questions anymore. She was creating space for healing. Guests walked in expecting a TV interview and left feeling like they'd been through a therapy session. That's what made Oprah unstoppable. She turned vulnerability into a superpower. And while the media kept talking about her weight or her love life, she kept talking about truth. She once said, "I had to stop comparing myself to who the world wanted me to be and start honoring who I already am." That hit different. By the mid-90s, Oprah had found her rhythm again, not as the queen of daytime, but as a woman finally at peace with her own reflection. Her show became more than entertainment. It became a classroom for the soul. And people showed up hungry for it. Because deep down, everyone watching was fighting something, a dream deferred, a heartbreak, a sense of not being enough. And when Oprah spoke, she wasn't talking at them. She was talking for them. She once said, "When I learned to fill myself up, I could give to others without being empty." That's the kind of wisdom you, get from success, you get that from pain. So yeah, the fame stayed, the cameras kept rolling, but something fundamental had shifted. Oprah wasn't just chasing success anymore. She was chasing significance. She had finally figured out who she was meant to be. Not a talk show host, not a celebrity, but a teacher of truth. But here's the thing about finding purpose. It doesn't just change you. It demands more of you. Because the moment Oprah found her purpose, she realized she couldn't keep doing things the old way. She was about to rebuild everything from her show to her entire soul. You know that saying, if you can't find a seat at the table, build your own damn table. Well, that's exactly what Oprah did. By the mid-80s, she wasn't just killing it on the Oprah Winfrey Show. She was dominating television. Every network in town wanted a piece of her. But Oprah? She'd learned enough to know how that game worked. They'd praise you on screen, then own every second of your sweat behind the scenes. She wasn't about to let that happen. So, in 1986, while most people were still calling her a TV host, Oprah pulled a power move that flipped the whole industry. She started her own production company, Harpo Productions. That's Oprah spelled backward, by the way. Because if anyone was going to flip the script, it was her. This wasn't just business. This was history. Oprah became the first black woman in America to own her own production company. That's not just a headline, that's a revolution. Hollywood had never seen anything like it. A woman, and a black woman at that, saying, "Nah, I'm not just the face of this. I'm the owner." And let's be clear, the move wasn't about ego. It was about ownership, about control, about finally calling the shots in an industry that had always tried to silence voices like hers. Under Harpo Productions, Oprah took the Oprah Winfrey Show and made it her own, literally. Every episode, every topic, every deal went through her. She chose the guests, the messages, the direction. And that's when the show started hitting a new level. She turned her platform into something powerful, not just entertainment, but elevation. Then came the Oprah Book Club. Now, back in the 90s, TV hosts weren't exactly known for pushing people to read. But Oprah had this wild idea. What if millions of people all read the same book together? What if storytelling could connect strangers across the country? Publishers thought she was nuts. People don't read anymore, they said. But once again, Oprah proved them wrong. The book club took off like wildfire. One recommendation from her could turn a quiet author into a bestseller overnight. Suddenly, America wasn't just watching, it was reading again. She made books cool. She made thinking cool. And most of all, she made empathy mainstream. But she wasn't done, not even close. In 2000, she dropped AU, the Oprah magazine. And this wasn't your typical glossy celebrity mag. It was personal, soulful, full of messages about purpose, healing, and growth. It was on about 10 ways to look younger. It was about 10 ways to love yourself. And that hit different. Kifra had officially become more than a media personality. She was a brand, a movement, a mentor for millions. But what made her empire truly unique was how she built it. She didn't build walls around her success. She built doors. She brought people with her. Writers, producers, teachers, healers. She gave them a platform, a spotlight, and a voice. Her philosophy was simple. When you succeed, I succeed. She believed in collaboration over competition, a lesson a lot of folks in Hollywood could be used back then. And let's talk about her circle for a second. Oprah didn't just surround herself with famous people. She surrounded herself with legends. She sat with Maya Angelou, not just as a fan, but as a student. Maya once told her, "Your crown has been paid for. Put it on and wear it." And Oprah did exactly that. She worked with Steven Spielberg on The Color Purple, a role that earned her an Oscar nomination and showed the world she could act just as powerfully as she could talk. She walked with Nelson Mandela, supported South African education, and used her global influence to raise awareness about issues most celebrities never even touched. Her reach wasn't just American, it was global. By the early 2000s, Oprah had crossed into billionaire territory. That's right, the girl from a farm in Mississippi, who once wore potato sack dresses, became the first black female billionaire in history. But what really stood out? The money didn't change her spirit. While others chased luxury, Oprah stayed grounded in gratitude. She built schools in Africa, funded scholarships, donated millions to charities, and quietly helped countless people behind the scenes. She never forgot what it felt like to be broke, voiceless, or unseen. And that's why her empire didn't just sit on wealth, it sat on purpose. But Oprah wasn't satisfied with just one lane. She'd already conquered TV, books, and print. Now she wanted her own network, a space where she could take her mission global. So, in 2011, she launched OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network. It was a bold move, maybe the boldest yet. Launching a whole TV network from scratch. Even big studios struggle with that. And the truth is, it wasn't easy. The first few years were rough. Ratings tanked. Critics called it a failure. Some even said Oprah's lost her magic. But Oprah didn't fold. She doubled down. She brought in powerhouse shows, authentic stories, and real conversations that reflected her purpose, not her ego. And eventually, OWN found its footing. It became a platform for stories that mattered. Stories about growth, faith, resilience, and healing. By then, Oprah had already proven herself 1,000 times over. But for her, it wasn't about proving anymore. It was about serving. She once said, "The reason I've been able to be so financially successful is because my focus has never been money." That's the secret right there. She didn't chase wealth. She chased meaning. And that's what made her unstoppable. From Harpo Productions to OWN, Oprah didn't just build an empire. She built a blueprint. A roadmap for every dreamer, every woman, every person who's ever been told no. She showed the world that owning your story is the first step to owning your destiny. But here's the thing. Empires don't protect you from pain. They just give you a bigger platform to face it. Because while Oprah had built an empire that stretched across the world, her next mission wasn't about money or fame. It was about something deeper. Let's get one thing straight. Oprah didn't just make it. She made it matter. When most people hit billionaire status, they buy islands, throw parties, and disappear behind gates. Oprah. She went the opposite direction. The bigger her success got, the more she gave away. She once said, "To whom much is given, much is required." And man, did she live that. By the mid-2000s, Oprah was already a global icon, TV legend, media mogul, billionaire boss. But deep down, she knew legacy isn't measured by what you stack up in the bank. It's measured by how many lives you lift while you're here. And that's exactly what she set out to do. In 2007, she did something that stunned the world. She opened the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. Not just a school, but a sanctuary for young women who'd been born into poverty, chaos, and violence. Now, here's the story behind it. Years earlier, Oprah met Nelson Mandela. They sat and talked about education, about how poverty was more than just a lack of money. It was a lack of opportunity. That conversation stuck with her. And when she visited South Africa, she saw it up close. Brilliant young girls with fire in their eyes, but no access to good schools. So, she said, "All right, if nobody else is going to do it, I will." And she did. She didn't just throw money at the problem. She built the school from the ground up, brick by brick, dream by dream. The campus looked like a university. Libraries, dorms, art studios, computer labs, everything these girls had been told they didn't deserve. And when the doors opened, she was there, hugging every single student like they were her own. She told them, "You are the daughters I never had." That school wasn't just about education. It was about transformation, about telling young women, you matter. Your voice matters. You belong in rooms they said you'd never walk into. And that became the heartbeat of Oprah's mission, empowerment. She knew what it was like to be a girl no one believed in. And she made damn sure the next generation didn't feel that way. But her giving didn't stop there. Over the years, Oprah donated hundreds of millions to scholarships, shelters, and disaster relief efforts. When Hurricane Katrina hit, she didn't just send a check, she went down to the Gulf, helping rebuild homes and communities. And every time a tragedy struck, floods, fires, earthquakes, she showed up. Not with a press team, but with heart. See, for Oprah, giving wasn't a PR move. It was a calling. She once said, "I don't believe in charity. I believe in giving people the tools to change their own lives." That's why her philanthropy always came back to education, empowerment, and healing, because she believed knowledge was the real ticket out of struggle. And she didn't just fund change, she spoke it into existence. Her later years on The Oprah Winfrey Show became a masterclass in purpose and faith. She brought on spiritual teachers, psychologists, survivors' voices that opened up conversations America wasn't ready for. She talked about mental health before it was trending. She talked about forgiveness like it was a muscle everyone needed to work out. She tackled trauma, body image, abuse, and faith, not with shame, but with compassion. And when she spoke about healing, it hit different because she'd lived it. People trusted her not because she was perfect, but because she was honest about not being perfect. At one point, she told her audience, "You don't heal by pretending it didn't happen. You heal by telling the truth." That line, it became a movement. She used her voice to break taboos, especially around abuse and self-worth. She stood on her stage and said, "This happened to me," and suddenly, millions of survivors across the country felt seen. That's real power, not fame, not fortune. Impact. She started shifting her show away from celebrity interviews to deeper soul-level conversations. People didn't just tune in for entertainment anymore. They tuned in for enlightenment. And that shift rippled across the world. Women from Chicago to Cape Town started quoting her. Churches used her words in sermons. Teachers played her clips in classrooms. Therapists referenced her interviews. Oprah wasn't just influencing culture, she was healing it. And she never forgot where she came from through it all. Every time someone asked her how she stayed grounded, she'd say, "Gratitude." Gratitude changes everything. That's the thing about Oprah. She could have lived her life on autopilot, enjoying her wealth and fame, but she chose purpose over comfort. She turned every blessing into a bridge for someone else. When she spoke at Harvard's commencement, she told the graduates, "The greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change their future by merely changing their attitude." And that wasn't just a line. That was her life story. She went from poverty to power, from pain to peace, and then used that peace to lift others higher. Her giving wasn't just about money, it was about meaning. By now, Oprah had built an empire, raised leaders, inspired generations, and healed hearts. But as much as the world knew her, her struggles, her rise, her success, there was still one question people couldn't stop asking. What drives Oprah Winfrey, really? What keeps someone that successful waking up every day, still chasing more? Not more fame, not more fortune, but more truth. Because behind all the giving, all the speeches, all the empire building, there was still a woman who had faced every kind of storm, and somehow came out lighter, not harder. Here's something a lot of people forget. Behind all that power, behind the cameras, the magazine covers, the billion-dollar empire, Oprah Winfrey is still just a woman trying to figure life out like the rest of us. And if you've ever wondered what it's really like to be her, the truth might surprise you. See, people imagine her life as one endless victory lap. But even at the top, Oprah faced something she never expected. Loneliness? Yeah, real talk. When the world sees you as a superhero, they forget you're human. She once said, "It's hard to be lonely when everyone knows your name, but no one really knows you." That hit. Because for years, Oprah gave so much of herself to the world, her energy, her empathy, her time, that sometimes she had nothing left for herself. When the applause faded and the studio emptied out, there were nights she sat alone, asking herself, who takes care of me? She'd built a life where everyone came to her for advice, healing, and strength. But she had to learn that even strong people need softness, and that's where Stedman Graham came in. Now, their love story isn't your usual Hollywood headline. They've been together for decades, but you won't catch them doing red carpet PDA or Instagram couple goals. Their relationship runs deep, not loud. When Stedman first met Oprah back in the mid-80s, she was still hustling in Chicago long before Queen of Talk became her nickname. He wasn't intimidated by her drive, he respected it. That's rare. He gave her space to be exactly who she was, and she gave him the same. They got engaged once, but never married. And when people asked why, Oprah kept it real. The truth is, I didn't want the marriage, I wanted the partnership. See, Oprah never needed saving. She didn't want a fairy tale. She wanted freedom, respect, and peace. And that's what they built together. And then, there's Gayle King. If Stedman was her calm, Gayle was her fire. Their friendship. Unbreakable. The two met way back when they were young reporters in Baltimore. Gayle once got stuck in a snowstorm, and Oprah, being Oprah, said, "Girl, come stay at my place." She did, and never really left her life since. Through every storm, the rumors, the critics, the heartbreaks, Gayle's been her adore. They talk every day. Literally, every day. Oprah once joked, "There's not a thing I haven't told Gayle. And if there is, I've probably forgotten it myself." But that friendship isn't just gossip and laughs, it's grounding. When the world tried to make Oprah superhuman, Gayle reminded her she's still human. It's a rare kind of love, the kind that holds you steady when fame tries to pull you apart. Now, let's talk about the real glue that's held Oprah together through everything faith. You can't talk about her without talking about God. But Oprah's faith isn't the Sunday morning only kind. It's a daily, lived-in, personal relationship. She says it's what guided every major decision in her life, from her career to her philanthropy to her peace of mind. Her motto, "God's dream for you is bigger than your dream for yourself." She believes that every setback, every heartbreak, every rejection is just God's way of redirecting you toward your purpose. And when she says it, you can feel she's speaking from experience. That belief gave her peace when life got loud. Its swift allowed her to say no to things that didn't align with her spirit. And that word, alignment, became her life philosophy. She's talked often about what she calls the law of intention. Basically, it means nothing in life happens by accident. Everything starts with intention. If your intention is rooted in love, growth, or service, then the universe moves with you. But if your motives come from ego or fear, eventually it all falls apart. She once said, "When you align with your truth, the universe responds." That's why she starts every morning the same way, in stillness. No phone, no chaos, just quiet gratitude. She says she thanks God before her feet even hit the floor. Not for the mansion, not for the money, but for breath, for another shot at living on purpose. And it's funny, because when people ask her about success, she never talks about money or ratings. She says, "Success is when your life's purpose lines up with your soul's calling." That's a kind of wisdom you, Dan, learn from books. You learn it from getting knocked down, getting back up, and figuring out who you are in between. Oprah S. learned that peace isn't about escaping pain. It's about facing it and finding meaning inside it. It's about knowing when to fight and when to let go. When to talk and when to just sit in silence. She's talked openly about fear too, that even after decades on TV, there are still moments she doubts herself. But here's what separates her from most people. She doesn't let fear make her decisions. She says, "I've learned that fear is a liar. It tells you you're not ready when you already are." And that's what makes her so relatable. She's one of the most powerful women in the world, yet she still admits she gets scared, still prays for clarity, still calls her best friend for advice. Because at the end of the day, the crown doesn't erase the human underneath it. Behind the power, the philanthropy, the empire, there's a woman who still believes in grace, still practices gratitude, and still wakes up every day trying to be a little better than she was yesterday. That's the real Oprah. Not the billionaire on the magazine cover, but the woman in the quiet moments, whispering prayers of thanks and listening for what's next. Because for her, peace wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something bigger. She'd found her truth, her love, her balance, but now she was ready to pass the torch. Let's be real. There's famous, there's legendary, and then there's Oprah Winfrey. We're talking about a woman who didn't just make it. She changed the game. See, Oprah didn't just break ceilings. She shattered every wall that said, "You don't belong here." A poor black girl from Mississippi who grew up wearing potato sack dresses somehow became one of the most powerful voices on planet Earth. And she didn't just sit in that power, she shared it. That's what makes Oprah's story hit different. It's not just her success, it's how she made you believe that you could succeed too. Let's talk about the Oprah effect. When Oprah believes in something, a book, a person, a cause, the whole world pays attention. You could call it magic, but really, it's trust. Decades of showing up, being real, being vulnerable, earned her something money can't buy: credibility. Think about it. She'd hold up a book on her show, and overnight it became a bestseller. Not because she hyped it up, but because people believed her when she said, "This moved me." And that's the thing about Oprah. She never sold inspiration. She lived it. From "You Get a Car" moments to the tearful confessions that made millions feel seen, Oprah redefined what daytime television could be. She turned talk shows once seen as gossip and fluff into classrooms for the soul. She gave people a safe space to cry, to heal, to be heard. And in a world full of noise, she made listening look powerful again. But her influence didn't stop at TV. It rippled through culture, through how we talk about race, trauma, healing, and success in America. Before Oprah, conversations about abuse, mental health, or forgiveness were taboo. people whispered about those things. She made them dinner-table conversations. She normalized being human. And for Black women, she was something rare, representation with power. She didn't apologize for her roots, her body, or her voice. She showed that you could be soft and strong, spiritual and successful, humble and powerful, all at once. You gotta understand, when Oprah stepped on that stage every day, she wasn't just a host, she was a mirror. People saw pieces of themselves in her, the broken parts, the hopeful parts, the maybe one day parts. She made us believe that pain doesn't have to define you. It can refine you. And that belief became her legacy, her awards. Sure, they're legendary. Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award at the Oscars, dozens of Emmys, honorary doctorates from Harvard, Duke, Princeton, you name it. But if you ask Oprah what she's proudest of, she won't mention any of that. She'll talk about impact, like the little girls in her leadership academy in South Africa, young women who went from poverty to becoming doctors, lawyers, and changemakers. She'll talk about how she sees herself in their eyes, the same spark her grandma once saw in her. She'll talk about fans who've written her letters, saying her words saved their lives. People who watched her show during their darkest hours and found a reason to keep going. That's the Oprah effect. It's not in dollars or ratings, but in hearts changed. And let's not forget, she also inspired an entire generation of creators, entrepreneurs, and truth-tellers. From media moguls to motivational speakers, so many of today's voices trace their inspiration back to Oprah. She made it okay to say, "I want more for my life," because she showed that success isn't luck, it's belief plus grit. And the message that ties it all together, that you are responsible for your own life. One of her most famous quotes sums it up perfectly. Turn your wounds into wisdom. You are responsible for your life. She is not saying life one T hurt. She is saying pain isn't the end. It's the beginning of growth. It's the lesson, not the label. And that's exactly what Oprah did. She took every rejection, every trauma, every scar, and built an empire of healing on top of it. That's her real superpower. Not the fame, not the money, but the ability to take suffering and turn it into service. Even today, long after the Oprah Winfrey Show ended, her presence is everywhere. Her voice is in podcasts. Her words are on bookshelves. Her influence echoes in the way people talk about purpose, empathy, and energy. Because Oprah didn't build a career, she built a movement. She changed what it means to be successful in America. Success, she taught us, isn't about what you have. It's about what you give. It's not about power. It's about purpose. And when you look back at her life, the little girl reciting Bible verses in church, the teenager who survived abuse, the woman who turned talk shows into therapy sessions for the world, you realize her story isn't just about fame. It's about faith. Faith that your voice matters. Faith that your pain has purpose. Faith that you can rise no matter where you start. That's the heartbeat of Oprah Winfrey's legacy. So when people ask what's her secret, it's simple. She never stopped believing in the power of possibility. She proved that one voice, one determined, fearless, unapologetic voice could change the culture. And if there's one takeaway from her story, it's this. You don't need a talk show to change lives. You don't need billions to make a difference. You just need courage. The courage to show up, to be real, and to never give up on yourself. Because if Oprah taught us anything, it's that no pain is wasted, and no dream is too big when you live with purpose. Her story is living proof that your past doesn't define your future, your choices do. And as long as you're breathing, you've still got time to rewrite your story. So ask yourself, if Oprah could turn her pain into power, what's stopping you?